China just closed 21,000 kindergarten in 1 year.
Kindergartens in China are witnessing a steep drop in numbers.
China's declining birth rate has led to the closure of nearly 15,000 kindergartens.
Well, China is witnessing a sharp decline in its kindergarten system, driven by an ongoing collapse in birth rate.
If you are under 35, there's a 50% chance you will never have children. Not can't, but won't. And let me show you what is actually happening. 21,000 schools empty. That's 57 closing every single day, which raises a question that nobody wants to ask. Why did humans stop having babies? So, what has changed? What happened to our species? It's not a slowdown, but simply a stop. Countries are spending billions to solve this problem. In South Korea, they have spent $270 billion, and in Hungary, they're spending 6% of their GDP to solve this issue. But there has been no progress. In 2023, China closed 14,000 kindergartens. In 2024, it is 21,000, and 2025 projections puts that number to 30,000. These aren't being renovated. They are becoming nursing homes. The buildings for children are literally being converted for elderly. And it is not just China. When I first saw that number 21,000, I thought it had to be wrong. Or maybe it is just a China thing. One child policy finally catching up with them. That would make sense, right? But Japan just recorded their lowest birth count in the history, 687,000 births. And they are closing 450 schools every single year. South Korea, well, they hit a record low of 0.72 babies per woman. And I need to show you what that number actually means, because it sounds abstract if you don't understand it. Think of it like this way. You start with 100 people and they have 36 kids. Those kids have 13 and those 13 will have 5. 4 generations, that's not a population decline, that's extinction math. Let's look at Europe. Italy has villages where no one has been born in 3 years. Germany is converting maternity wards into senior care. San Francisco has more dogs than children. This isn't random. This is a pattern. So, governments are panicking, and they are doing what governments do when they panic. They throw out the money. Hungary is giving you $30,000 for having 3 kids. Mothers of 4 will never have to pay taxes, ever. And free IVF for everyone who wants it. But their birth rate is still below the replacement and it is falling. South Korea, they have spent $270 billion over 16 years. That's $53,000 for every single birth. They now have the world's lowest birth rate and it keeps on dropping. I mapped every country that's tried to fix this. 63 countries are shrinking right now. Over half of humanity now lives in countries that is below the replacement rate. When every government on earth throws hundreds of billions of dollars at the same problem and every single one of them fails, you have to start asking a different question. What if this isn't a problem to be solved? What if it's a trap that was built? Alright, so if money can't fix it, I needed to understand where is all the money actually going? Like what changed between your parents' generation and yours. In 1970, median home cost 2.3 times the median income. In 2024, the number is 5.8 times. It didn't just go up, it nearly tripled in one generation. Your grandparents bought a house on one income and raised 3 kids. You need 2 incomes just to afford rent. But okay, maybe if you skip the house, you can still afford the kids, right? Childcare in the US costs more than college tuition in 32 states. Let me say that again because it sounds insane. It costs more money to watch your 2-year-old than it would cost to send them to a state university. But at least wages went up to match all of that expense, right? Well, median household income adjusted for inflation has grown 8% since 1975. Housing costs, well, they are up by 190%. Childcare, up by 214%, and healthcare, well, they're close to 200%. So, you are making basically the same money your parents made for the thing that costs as much as 3 times. The math doesn't work. It was never supposed to. After all this research, I needed a break from all that data. So I started scrolling on social media and I found a video of a woman throwing a birthday party for her cat. But it is not a joke. Her whole family is there in matching outfits, birthday cakes, singing happy birthday, and it has 6 million views. And I am thinking, okay, this is peak internet. That's the kind of hilarious memes are put out there. Then I started reading what she wrote, and this is fascinating. Other girls my age getting married or pregnant. I made a birthday party for my cats, and the comments are equally wild. Honestly, I'd rather do this than have kids. This is the life I can actually afford. My fur baby is my whole world. She needs to not be the only one in her family with nothing to celebrate. And I started wondering how many people are doing this. What I found wasn't a trend. It is an economy. And this is the pet industry. Americans are spending $150 billion on pet in 2024. That's more than what federal government spent on the education. Gen Z spends $170 per month on their pets. And it is not just food. Birthday parties, professional photo shoot, health insurance, spa day. Veterinarian just became the #1 rated job in America. The job postings is up by 124% since 2021. Pet insurance is projected to hit $30 billion by 2030. We built an entire industry around not being alone. So here's what that actually means. $150 billion isn't going towards childcare or school or helping young people buy homes. It is going to an industry that figured out how to monetize loneliness. But that's only half the story, because while some people looked at the math and said, okay, different life perhaps, there's a whole other group who didn't give up. They are still trying and hoping and believing that eventually this will work out. And funny enough, there is an industry that is built around this hope. And what I uncovered about this industry's success and what governments are doing to make sure people have kids in the future, that's where the story gets dark. Because when $270 billion in cash incentives doesn't work out, or when biology won't cooperate, someone is going to try a different solution. And what I found honestly scared me. This is the group that nobody talks about. People who's always wanting to have kids, who planned on having them, they just haven't had them yet. The eventually crowd. You know them by different names. Dinks, which is dual income, no kids. And this sounds like a lifestyle choice. I looked into it. 65% of them say they are planning to have kids. 37% people say they will have kids in next 5 years. They are not child-free by choice. They are child later by necessity, waiting until they are ready. But here's the thing about eventually having kids. This strategy has an expiration date. I'm not going to sugarcoat this, but peak fertility is late 20s and early 30s. It starts dropping at 35, and at 40 you are half as fertile as you were at 25. A 25-year-old trying to get pregnant will have 18% chance per month versus a 40-year-old who will have 7%. You spend your 20s building stability, you spend your early 30s trying to find someone, and you finally feel ready at 35, 36 or 37. And the window is already closing in. So I wanted to know, how common is this actually? As per World Health Organization report in 2023, 1 in 6 people will experience infertility at some point at their life. In America, 42% have either gone through fertility treatment themselves or know someone close to them who is going through. So if you are watching this and thinking that this won't be me, statistically, there's a very good chance it will be, or it will be someone you really love and know. So what do people do when they realize eventually having kids might not work? There are 2 main options. 1, egg freezing. You freeze your eggs, try to buy yourself more times. 40,000 women did this last year, which is up by 40% from the year before. Companies like Apple and Meta offer it as part of their benefit now. This industry is projected to hit $30 billion by 2035. The second option is IVF. You are not buying time anymore. You're trying to make it happen right now. The cost per cycle can range from $15,000 to $30,000, and the average cycles needed to get pregnant is 2.5. So you are looking close to $50,000 of investment. And the success rates? Under 35, it is about 50%, and this number drops to half when you close to 40. And over 42, this number is 5%. So you wait because you can't afford kids, then you spend $50,000 trying to have them anyway, and it still might not work. There's this woman I want to tell you about, and her name is Bridget Adams. In 2014, she was on the cover of Bloomberg Business Week. She became the face of the whole movement. She started a blog, gave talks, and she was the proof that you could have it all. Just later, she froze 11 eggs in her late 30s, paid close to $20,000, and felt that she finally bought herself time. At 45, she decided that she was ready and she unfroze all of the 11 eggs. None of them worked. She told the Washington Post that there's a huge marketing hype and overpromise. We are only seeing half the story. She finally had a child through a donor egg and a donor sperm, not her genetics and not the plan she had carved out for herself. So when biology won't cooperate, someone is going to try a different solution. And what I found next honestly scared me more than any of those numbers. Children's Hospital of Philadelphia has built something called Extend. It is an artificial womb system. This is a lamb floating in a synthetic amniotic fluid inside a bag, tubes connected to its umbilical cord, and machines keeping it alive. This lamb lived like this for 28 days. It grew, it developed, its organs matured, and brain developed normally. This was experiment number 300. In September 23, FDA held a public meeting specifically to discuss the testing of this technology on human babies. The lead researcher testified before this committee, and he said that we have now run over 300 lambs in the artificial womb system, and the runs are generally remarkably smooth. We have observed no acute irreversible events that threatens the survival. And then he goes on adding this, that we believe that our preclinical data supports feasibility and safety, and that it is adequate for consideration of a carefully designed clinical study. In simple words, he is asking for permission to test this technology on human babies, and the FDA is listening. But the US isn't the only country building this. In Netherlands, the European Union gave researchers close to 3 million euros to develop their own version. And then I found Israel. And this is where it gets to feel like we have crossed a line. In Weizmann Institute of Science, Professor Jacob Hanna and his team successfully grew mouse embryos in an artificial womb. And that's impressive. But it is not a breakthrough. In the same month, when FDA was meeting to discuss about artificial womb, his team announced that he had created synthetic human embryos. No sperm, no egg, and no womb. They took stem cells, reprogrammed them, and grew structures that look exactly like 14-day-old human embryos. No parents required. And then finally, there's China. They have developed an AI nanny system for monitoring embryos in artificial womb. It watches the embryos develop, it detects problem, adjusts nutrients and oxygen levels. It also alerts human technicians if something is not going according to the plan. But here's the quote that made me stop. An anonymous researcher at the Capital Institute of Pediatrics in Beijing told the South China Morning Post that I don't think technology would be a problem, but it could risk turning hospitals into factories that churn out babies, and no hospital would want to bear this responsibility. Think about it. Factories that churn out babies, and that's not me being dramatic. That's a Chinese researcher in a peer-reviewed publications saying the quiet part out loud. This is no longer science fiction. Now, I need to show you something, and I need to be very clear before I do. What you are about to see is not real. This is a concept video created by a filmmaker named Hashim. This doesn't exist today, and this is a vision of what could be the possibility in near future. Ectolife, 75 labs worldwide, 400 growth pods each, and 30,000 babies per year. Parents choose genetic traits through an app, monitor fetal development on their phones, and press a button when they are ready to deliver. Again, concept, vision, not reality. But Hashim said something in his interviews. He says that according to the experts I consulted, this danger-free, convenient alternative could become a reality soon, perhaps in the next 10 to 15 years, if governments lift ethical restrictions. So, now you have labs in 4 different countries building machines that don't need people to fall in love. They don't need anyone to sacrifice their career, and they don't need anyone to afford childcare. They also don't need 2 people to agree on timing. Machines will create babies. The same governments that fail to make having childcare affordable are now funding technology to make parents optional. Alright, let me tell you what I actually learned from all of this. I started this because I wanted to understand why everyone I know is exhausted, broke, single, or figuring out when to have kids. And I thought maybe we were just doing something wrong. So I spent time looking at the numbers. China, 21,000 kindergartens closed in 1 year. South Korea, 0.72 children per woman. Half of humanity is below replacement rate, and $150 billion spent on pets. The next $25 billion is spent on fertility treatment that fails most of the time. And now labs in 4 countries are building machines to grow babies without parents. And after looking at all of that, here's what I know. The math was right. If you decided not to have kids, you did the math was right. If you wanted kids but couldn't afford them, the math was right. And if you spent everything you had on IVF and it didn't work, the math was right. The math has always been right. You weren't failing, you were responding rationally to an impossible situation. For the first time in human history, having children became an economic decision instead of a biological one. And for the first time in human history, the economics don't work. Your grandparents didn't have to decide if they could afford kids. They just had them. Your parents didn't run spreadsheets comparing childcare costs to career earning. They figured it out. But you inherited a world where housing costs half of your income before you eat, where childcare costs more than a college degree, and where 2 incomes barely covers the survival. And then someone looked at you and said, why aren't you having kids? Like it was a personal failing. So half of you won't have kids, but that is not a statement about who you are. It is an indictment of what we built. The birth rate isn't failing because people stopped wanting families. It is failing because we made families economically impossible. And instead of fixing that, we are building machines to replace you. This gap is only increasing and machines are here to fix it.